I want to welcome you to another Redox Doc video series. Today's topic is arthritis, and it's an important topic because probably 1 in 3 adults has arthritic changes in their body as early as in their 30s. And so whether it be from injuries or just from aging, arthritis can be a big health issue that limits our lives and interrupts everything from our work to our sleep. So what we want to focus today is to understand the connection sort of at the deepest level of what's really behind arthritis. We know that we can take medications like ibuprofen that modify inflammation but don't get to the root of the issue. So let's talk about the root of the issue. That simply is oxidative stress that is undealt with in the body, and it creates redox trouble. Okay, so here's a picture of a joint. Hopefully you can see it. Basically, it's a knee joint minus the patella. So there's the femur, the tibia, and the joint capsule. There's a little capsule that has fluid inside of it called synovial fluid. And this lubricates and helps the joint to function and repair itself. It is in the fluid that much of the nutrients for the joint are carried, because there's no actual blood vessels that go to the cartilage of a joint. They don't have a blood supply. They get their oxygen and nourishments and all of the messaging through cellular diffusion. So what happens in the process of dealing with arthritis is that this capsule gets disturbed, little bone spurs can form in the joint, and this is what we call arthritis. It leads to swelling, pain, and deformity. So just let me take a second and make that a contrast to other kinds of arthritis. There are other kinds of arthritis, such as rheumatoid arthritis or autoimmune conditions, where the mechanism is a little different. It has to do with the dysfunction of our immune system that creates the inflammation of a joint. Today, we're going to be focusing just on osteoarthritis, which is more of a wear and tear arthritis, an aging arthritis, and it has a little different mechanism of action. So at the core of all this is a certain kind of cell. It's called a chondrocyte. And chondrocytes are the cartilage cells that are on the surface of the joint and that represent the articular surface. And they're important to maintain the health of a joint. They are slippery, they're cushioned, they hold a lot of water. In fact, the water content of the cartilage is higher than our body content. It's almost 90%. So these cells, in order to stay well, have to repair and replace themselves. So during the day, our joints are moving and rubbing, and literally it's kind of like pavement. Some of that gets kind of scraped off in the process of doing our work. And so there's a pothole in the road, so to speak. At nighttime, as we rest, our chondrocytes get busy and repair and replace themselves. If everything's working well, we get up the next day, recovered, we go on about our business, and we create new potholes. It's just life. So our body is built to repair and replace itself, and if these cells do that work, we stay healthy. If they fall short, we got problems. So why would they fall short? Largely, it has to do with during the process of aging, our chondrocytes don't produce the right amount of balance of redox molecules that are critical in allowing for the prevention of oxidative stress, which is at the heart of the beginning of arthritis. So there's, there's a buildup of imbalance of some of these chemicals that normally are in nice balance and allow the cell to do its work. The cell has to produce ATP energy. The cell has to do its work of repairing and replacing itself. And if there is stress due to aging and a decline in the mitochondria to produce those chemicals and to produce energy for the cell to do its work, then we call that oxidative stress. So then oxidative stress gives way to a failure to communicate within the cell, and we call that just failed cell signaling. The cell starts to think weird. It doesn't do its work. It feels tired. It feels stressed, a little angry. And so it just sort of folds its arms and says, I don't think I can get much done today. and the work gets left undone. So in essence, the chondrocyte is starting to age. We call that in medicine senescence. But the aging of that chondrocyte is a big deal, and it can lead to actually some of those cells may just give up and die. And so those potholes in the joint get left unfixed. And all of a sudden, that joint surface is getting rough and kind of more than potholes, there's like craters. And so this is making for a rougher surface as we walk, and that creates inflammation, synovial inflammation. And there are cytokines or chemicals that build up in the joint that also mediate inflammation. And this joint capsule, the fluid can actually grow and swell and feel hot. If we've had a lot of activity, some people will really literally feel the heat of that buildup of inflammation in the joint. That might go down overnight, but might not. Eventually, that inflammation, that's the real trouble. That leads to dysfunction of the underlying bone. And so underneath the joint surface, that bone starts to break down. And it forms these arthritic spurs. That's what we call them. And that causes trouble because now you've got a weird shaped joint that isn't articulating well. And so it's kind of a depressing situation, really. So what can we do about it? Well, most of the time, if we go see a medical doctor, they're going to do an intervention with a medication, an anti-inflammatory medication. They're working right here. So whether it be aspirin or ibuprofen or something like that, it's working right here to try to minimize inflammation going to bone destruction. But this is so far downstream. What if we could work further upstream, really get to the core of this and avoid this and the death of the cells and the big potholes and the craters in our joints? What if we take it all the way back to the beginning of oxidative stress? Well, actually, this is at the heart of some of the most recent research in arthritic therapies. There are a lot of studies right now that are going on looking at oxidative stress at the core of the issue and see if we could modify, these are called disease-modifying drugs. And, the future is bright. Hopefully there will be things that we can use that don't have ill effects. The trouble with most medicines, they have some ill effects, side effects. Well, in my experience, one of the great ways to deal with oxidative stress is to get to the core of what's happening there at a cellular level. And with an infusion of redox signaling molecules in our system, we can actually assist that cell in maintaining a healthy balance. We can assist the cell in producing energy and allowing it to do its work, not just sitting there looking pretty, but actually doing the work of repairing and replacing. And so redox molecules that can be taken as a supplement mediate changes at every single level of this problem. And I personally have found great results with joints in my body that have been inflamed following injuries earlier in my life, in my high school years in sports. And 30, 40 years later, I'm seeing changes because I'm using a redox supplement that allows my body to mediate these issues deeper in the physiology than just right here, which frankly didn't work that well for me, taking ibuprofen. So our body is amazing, what it's capable of doing. And yes, the problem is we do age. But what would happen? What would happen to our bodies is as we live our lives, if we could provide resources, molecular resources to assist ourselves day in, day out, day in, day out, to modify this aging thing and move it backwards a little bit and see if we couldn't just simply restore cellular balance at the core and avoid having to use medications that can cause some serious issues with our digestive tract and our kidneys. So I hope that's helpful to you. And I'm grateful that you've taken the time to attend our class. We'll see you at the next lecture.